Hello, and welcome back to my tutorial series for Weird's The Other Side. Today I'm going to be covering how to use your fate deck, including performing duels, flips, and cheating from your control hand. If you hear any terms you don't understand relating to anything else, my first video in the series covers most of the definitions you need to know. There are also links below to the official rules, an FAQ, and errata document if you prefer to see the actual wording. As a quick reminder from the last video, unlike in most miniature war games, we don't use dice here in The Other Side. Instead, we use a fate deck. This is a deck of cards with both jokers, so 54 cards total, and some thematically unique suits instead of our normal ones. If you want to play with any old deck of cards, you can, as long as you and your opponent are both aware of what in-game suit matches the normal suits. For reference, rams are hearts, crows are spades, tomes are clubs, and masks are diamonds. However, all of the starter and allegiance boxes come with at least one fate deck each, so you shouldn't have to worry too much about finding one. There are two important parts of every card: its suit and its value. Suits we've already covered, but they can be seen in the corners of the cards and often in the middle of the card too. The value is just the number written in the corners of the card. The ones numbered 2 to 10 are obvious, but for the others, ace is 1, jack is 11, queen is 12, and king is 13. The jokers are a little special. The black joker has a value of 0 and no suit, while the red joker has a value of 14 and all 4 suits. While playing, your cards move between 4 locations: the fate deck, control hand, conflict, and discard pile. The fate deck sits face down, so neither player can know what order the cards are in. Anytime you're asked either to flip a card or draw a card into your control hand, you do so from the top of this deck. Your control hand is where you've put cards that you've drawn. You can have a maximum of 6 cards in your hand. If you ever draw more than 6, you have to immediately discard so that you're back down to the cap of 6. You can look at the cards in your own control hand at any time, but it's hidden to your opponents. The conflict is just an open bit of space separate from the others, and is where you place cards that are flipped. After the current flip is resolved, all cards in the conflict are put into the discard pile. Cards are visible to all players while they're there. The discard pile is where you keep all cards that have been flipped or discarded. At the end of every turn, or whenever your fate deck is empty, you shuffle the discard pile back into your fate deck. Both players can look through each other's discard piles at any time. Now that we know the basics of the cards, let's talk about when we'll get to use them. For the most part, that will be when you're performing a duel. Duels can involve either one player or two, and mostly happen as part of an action. When the action says that it's versus an AV, like defense here, then it involves both players. These actions cannot target friendly fire teams. When the action says that it's versus a number, then it's just the one player seeing if their AV plus the value of the flipped card matches or beats that target number. These are usually morale actions, and like with the example on screen, sometimes don't even need a target. So, what does using an action look like? Well, this is a summary of the steps you go through in an action, which I'll be going over for the next little bit. One thing you'll hear me say occasionally is attacker and defender. This only comes up in duels that are versus an AV, and so are targeting an enemy fire team. The fire team that's taking the action is the attacker. The fire team being targeted is the defender. The first step in taking an action is to declare it. This means announcing to your opponent what action you're intending on taking, and checking that you meet all of the action's requirements. These requirements include not being engaged if it's a missile action, having the target be within the range indicated in the action, and so on. You cannot declare a particular action if you can't fulfill all of its requirements. Once your action is being declared, if it requires a duel, then you do it now. Otherwise, you skip this step. To start, all players participating in the duel flip a card and place it face up in their own conflicts. Next, we modify the results. This is where the participating players have the most agency over the duel. Attackers always do their full modify step, then the defender does theirs. In the step, you can do as many of the following options as you'd like, once each. You can spend 1 Inspire token on your unit to get a +2 to your AV, spend 1 Shaken token on your enemy's unit to give a -2 to their AV, spend 1 Tactics token to flip another card and choose which one you want to use in the duel, and cheat in a card from your hand to use instead of any of the cards in the conflict. However, if you flipped either joker, then you can't cheat a card from your hand. You can still do the other 3 options though. Note that when a fire team is taking an action that's versus a target number, any shaken tokens on them can't be used. This is because only one player is participating in the duel, so there is no opponent with a modify step to use them. Once both players have modified, or chosen not to, the players find their final duel total by adding together their AV, the card in their conflict, and any modifiers that change their AV, like shaken or inspired tokens, or effects from other sources. If the attacker's total ties or beats the defender's total or the target number, then the action is a success. To declare triggers, you need to look at two things: your margin, which is the total value that your dual totals value beat your opponent's or the target number by, and all of the suits in your dual total. You can spend that margin and all suits in your dual total to activate any triggers that the unit has. Triggers can be found in several places: on the unit card directly beneath the action, on some asset, allegiance, and envoy cards, and every unit always has access to the universal trigger, Powerful Attack. It's important to note that you can declare as many triggers as you want, as long as you have the suits and total margin to spend on them. This is especially important when you use the red joker, since it gives you one of each of the 4 suits. For example, if Bin here is in Glory and flips or cheats the red joker when using Shred Soul, he can declare all 3 of its triggers. After you've declared your triggers, the duel is officially over, and if it was successful, you now get to resolve the action. The order of operations here is pretty simple. If a trigger says immediately, it's always done first. These usually change something about the action, like increasing its strength value. Next, you resolve the base text of the action in the order it's written. Then, you resolve the non-immediately triggers. These triggers are drawn in the order they're written on the unit card, then in the order of the attacker's preference for any that come from other places. However, triggers that let you take another action are always the last ones that get resolved. The most common thing you'll find in the base text of an action is strength and a number. When you succeed with actions with a strength value, even if the value is 0, we say the defender has suffered a hit. Fire teams are also said to have suffered a hit whenever any other game effect succeeds with a strength, like when they move through hazardous terrain. When a fire team suffers a hit, then the opposing player, the attacker usually, performs a penetration flip. This is a simple card flip using the value of the strength as your AV and treating the target's armor as your target number. This is not a duel, so you can't use your Shaken or Inspired tokens here. You also can only cheat this flip if the attacking fire team is not missing any models from it, and if you didn't flip a joker. You can always spend a tactics token to flip another card though. If the total ties to the defender's armor, they take 1 damage, plus 1 for every 5 you beat the target's armor by. One last thing I want to cover before we move on is a special case: actions with a pulse in their range. What this means is that you need to perform a separate duel against all targets in range, one after the other, in the order of the attacker's choosing. So, now that we know how it all works, let's go through an activation and see what this looks like in action. Here, the Gibbering Horde's player's cards are on the left, and the Electrocutioner's player's cards are on the right. We'll say the Karkanoi are currently activating, they've already taken the advance order, and have moved to where they are now. We'll go with the leftmost Karkanoi first. The Karkanoi's melee action has a range of 2 inches and doesn't have any enemies close enough, so it decides instead to use the Spawning. This has an AV of 5, a target number of 14, and no special restrictions to worry about. They flip a card, and it's the 7 of Masks, not enough on its own, and it doesn't have any Inspired or Tactics tokens unfortunately. So instead, it cheats in the 9 of Tomes from its hand. 5 plus 9 is 14, so the action succeeds. There are no triggers it can declare, so it resolves the action, summoning in an Egg Clutch, and that fire team is done. We go with the bottom Karkanoi next, who wants to attack the bottom Electrocutioners. This time, the target is within that 2-inch range. The action's AV is 5, and is against the enemy's defense, which is also 5. The attacker flips the 5 of Masks, while the defender flips the 9 of Masks. The attacker really wants this to succeed, so they cheat in their King of Crows from their hand, putting their dual total at 18, 5 plus 13. The defender chooses not to modify, since their dual total is currently 14, 5 plus 9, which is only 4 margin, so the Karkanoi can't declare the powerful attack trigger. The Karkanoi have a crow in their dual total, so they do get to declare the trigger The Feeding to gain a reinforcement token. The defender has suffered a hit, and the action has a strength, so the attacker now does a penetration flip. Their action strength is 3, and they flip the 9 of Rams for a total of 12. The defender's armor is 8, so 1 model is killed. The attacker could cheat in their 10 of Masks to do 1 more point of damage, but choose to save that card for a rainier day. After resolving the action's text, they resolve their trigger, The Feeding, gaining that reinforcement token. The last Karkanoi fire team now acts. It also chooses to use its Scything Claws on the same target. Karkanoi have the ability Hunger, which gives them +1 to all of their actions AVs per reinforcement token on them, to a max of +3, so this time it gets to attack with an AV of 6. The attacker flips the 9 of Crows, and the defender flips the 6 of Rams. The attacker is feeling pretty good about its current total of 15, 6 plus 9, and chooses not to modify. The defender doesn't want to risk their fire team being killed, so they spend their modify step by cheating in the Queen of Crows. This gives them a total of 17, 5 plus 12, beating the attacker's total, so the action fails. And that's it. That's everything you need to know about how to use your Fate deck. Next video, I'll cover how to set up and play more than just the one activation, and then you should know everything you need to jump in and play yourself. Happy gaming!